you all for coming. It's just always great to see people who are excited about representing students and working to fix the university. So tonight is not a heavy night. It's not about going through what the election rules are or anything like that. It's just to give an overview of what the organisation is and the role is, and just to hopefully clarify any questions you have and sort of help you lean towards whether you want to actually nominate or not. So tonight we'll have Daniel Randell, the General Manager. He'll start us off by just giving an overview of what the organisation is and what it does. Followed by that we'll have Jason Bilberry, the Policy and Research Officer, and he will give you a detail of what the roles are. And then finally myself and Vanessa, and if he shows up, Luke, being current and former representatives, will just give an overview of what our role was like, and after that we can answer some questions. There's some pizza and you can talk to us one-on-one. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Daniel.
Thank you. That probably should have been the slide then. Welcome. Yes, my name's Daniel Randell. I'm the General Manager, so I've been with USASA for about 3 years now. My role is I run the operations side of the organisation, manage the staff and look after our team that works with students. But I also sit on the student board as, I suppose, as an ex officio, so I report into the student board. The students are my boss, and I attend board meetings and interact with the students on the board on a daily basis. You'll find that we tend to use the term board a lot when we're talking about the student representative group, which Jason will talk a bit more about later, but essentially because what it is that as student representatives, you're acting as almost like a company board or an association board. So I will attend board meetings, I'll provide monthly reports, but I also have a lot of interactions with the student representatives on a day-to-day basis, and helping at times to make connections within the university, to come up with strategies around advocating on certain issues, assisting with lobbying around other issues, and try and open those connections with university staff members. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why USASA exists and how we look as an organisation. We've put up a few, there's too many there to read, so I'm not going to go through them one by one because I don't want to make this a really boring lecture. But really the reason why we put them up is the Constitution defines what we exist for, and the main thing really is about promoting the interests of students. We actually talk more from a strategic objective sense about being here for students and students being at the centre of everything we do. So what we've done is we've taken those pages worth of objectives from the Constitution and we've turned them into our really 3 key strategies: providing a voice for students, making sure that students get support regarding their rights and responsibilities and understand the policies, and to create a really great campus culture. Within that, we then break those objectives down into our key areas of working, and we call them voice. These are for internal purposes. We call it voice, which is obviously the student voice. That covers the student representatives positions, the elections, our student-run magazine. Under the objective 2, we look at advocacy and advice, and we have an advocacy team that works with students, provides them advice on student policies and on academic policies of the university, and also helps them navigate the processes of the university if they get in trouble. The third objective there is really about campus culture. What we're looking to do is to create a great environment for students where they're going to make a lot of connections for life. These objectives were written by students, designed by students, and the student voice is a part of all of these strategic objectives. We did a 3-year strategic plan, and next year that plan will be coming up for review. It was a 2015 to 17 plan, so sorry, a 2-year plan, and next year whoever is on the student body will then be a part of really having a look at those strategic objectives and looking at what our plan is for the next really 3 to 5 years. So we get our funding mostly from the university. USASA runs on an operating budget of around about $1.65 million a year, of which $1.5 million comes from the university via a grant, and from the other $150,000 is a combination of money that we make through selling merchandise items, commissions on second-hand books, tickets for subsidised events, and advertising and sponsorships that we're able to source. One of the misnomers that we have is that USASA gets all the SAF funding. We don't get all the SAF funding. The university collects about $5 million in SAF funding. Then we get a grant from the university for $1.5 million, which the university takes from that SAF pool. Slight technicality there, but I think it's a really important one, which is that USASA does not get the SAF money. We get a grant from the university, which they take out of the SAF funds. As you can see there, the majority of that money we spend on student support and advocacy and on student services. You can see there a bit of a breakdown. Is that easy enough to read? Yep. If you're interested in any of this stuff, we're more than happy to provide copies of these slides so that you can have a look at some of these things in a little bit more detail. Just let Jason know and he can email you a copy. Might even get you, Jason, just to email it out to everyone that registered. We have a total of about 28 full-time, part-time and casual staff. That's our core staffing there within our head office. Our head office is at City West Campus in the Hans Heissing building. I think something that's been really important for USASA and has been a change over the last 3 years is to move really more towards this ideal of being truly student run. We have a student board and a student board is providing us with our strategic direction, but something that we've moved a lot more towards over the last 3 years has also been student run in our staffing. So out of 28 staff in rough numbers, roughly 18 of those staff are current students, about another 3 graduate students and another 4 are alumni. So out of 28 staff, roughly 25 of our current staff are either students, graduates or alumni. So we really are student run. The board, which is what I guess we're here to talk about tonight, and Jason will go into more detail, but we have 14 people that sit on our student board who meet monthly and look at both the operational aspects of the organisation, but particularly focus on the governance side, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have a president and a postgraduate student representative. We have an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander student representative, 2 representatives per metropolitan campus, 1 from each of the regional campuses. And then we have ex officio members of the board. So we have a legal advisor that sits on the board. We have a financial advisor whose background is in finance and accounting. And we also have provision for up to 2 observers from the university. At the moment, we have 1 regular attendee from the university, which is the Director of Student Academic Services. And that's a really useful thing for us as an organisation to be able to talk about current issues with the university directly in front of a senior member of the university senior management team who is also directly involved in the academic services, and so we're able to raise issues directly with them. There's a whole lot of stuff there about our governance, but basically we're an association, so we're guided by and come under the legislation of the Associations Act, which means that you are in a sense a director of an association if you are on our board, and you have certain legal requirements around that. A particular part of that is really around governance and managing risk for the organisation. Strategy is obviously a very important part of that, and an important part of the role is appointing the general manager of the organisation, who is then responsible for the operations and the day-to-day really running of the organisation. This slide is something that we've pulled in, which actually comes from the Australian Institute of Company Directors. And what it is about what is the role of a board of an organisation. This is something that associations of, whether it's within the arts, whether it's within the university side of things, not-for-profits of all kind, this is the framework which is considered to be best practice for boards to look at. So it really is about those 4 key areas of providing accountability for the organisation, deciding on what the strategy of the organisation is, and for me that's one of the really exciting parts of both my role and the role of the student representatives, is the strategy is really about why are we here? What are we trying to achieve as an organisation? I think that's where we get in the really nitty-gritty stuff, where we really get into what do students need, what do students want. That's actually the bit that I probably enjoy the most. A big part of that role is monitoring and supervising the organisation, but also monitoring to some extent each other and holding each other accountable. And then revising and establishing policies for the organisation. So there's a lot of governance as a part of that, and ensuring that the organisation runs smoothly, is meeting its legislative requirements, but importantly also ensuring fiscal responsibility, that we're spending students' money wisely. And then the board really works through, it says here they call it the CEO, but the CEO or general manager. So the board then works through me, and then it goes out through the staff from there. So I love the way this breaks it up, because it does break it up into the outward looking and inward looking, but particularly I like the present and past and future focus of that diagram as well, because the board's role is about looking at what have we done in the past, but it's also looking about where do we want to be in the future, where do we want to be as an organisation in 3 to 5 years, but importantly, how do we want to work with the university and ensure that the student voice is heard in every university decision making process. And I think that's, you know, probably our biggest goal. So what does the board do? I kind of covered up a lot of that. We've got to make sure that we stick to our constitution and bylaws. If you haven't had a look at them and you're fascinated to read them, we have our constitution is on our website. I think it's under policies, under the About Us bit. You can have a look at the constitution. You can have a look at, it's an interesting document. It's worth looking at if you are going to run for election, because it does provide some of the guidelines around running for election. But I think something worth looking at is the objects, which is right at the start of it, which I guess goes back to the establishment, certainly at least of that constitution and that period of the organisation, of why the organisation exists and what we're trying to achieve. And something that we're doing at the moment, which, just to embarrass him, Isaac at the back is driving at the moment, is a project for the organisation to actually review that and have a look at that and say, is this still what the organisation's objectives are? Do they reflect the current student cohort, and do they reflect currently what we're trying to achieve for students? It's very important that the board acts in the best interest of the organisation. That seems obvious, but it's actually also a legal requirement in all times, in all decisions that the board makes. It has to be what is in the best interest of the organisation. Maintaining our sense of purpose, really that kind of links in with the monitoring part as well. Making sure that when we're looking at new ideas, new projects, kind of looking at them through the lens of that strategic plan. Does that meet the objectives of our strategy? And does it meet that broader goal of ensuring that we're here for students and that students are at the centre of the decisions that we're making? And you get to hear from me every month, which is just exciting in and of itself. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Jason. Jason's going to have a chat to you in a bit more detail about what the student representative role is, and I guess a bit more about what it means from a day-to-day basis and what you're actually doing.
So just to tell you about myself, basically my role is to support the board, to provide some background research for them if they're looking into particular issues that they want to find out more about, and they're looking to really sort of build up a case for, to start driving that. I'll do that for them. I put together all the board papers for every meeting, every monthly meeting, and then I also kind of keep a general sort of look at kind of what's happening in the higher education sector. So that's kind of what I end up doing on a day-to-day basis. But ultimately, I'm really just there to help and support the board itself for anything they actually need. So what we'll talk about. So what we'll talk about is looking at the president's role. So it's an interesting role. It's quite unique. It's quite special. It's really there designed to sort of lead and guide the board in the direction that the board wants to go. They're the spokesperson for the board itself. What they're there to really say is whatever the board is actually talking about. So that's what the president will actually end up doing. They work with very closely with the general manager. They will basically look at almost managing the board itself, looking at setting up goals that each individual rep wants to accomplish during their time there, and then they'll sort of monitor that progress as they go along throughout the year. So it's almost a bit of managing people off the get-go. That's why with having support from Daniel can be really critical, because it's still a process that takes years to sort of develop and learn, where he has this sort of expertise. And the other part of it is you'll basically chair the board meetings themselves, which is another skill to actually to learn and to actually gain. It does take some time. Our lawyer that's on the board is very supportive in that process for presidents as they come in. But as a chairperson, it's about ensuring that everyone within the board is actually having an opportunity to provide input, and sort of making sure that it happens throughout every board meeting. So that's another piece of that. Another thing, the other very important thing is to continue to reach out and speak to students, to continually to make sure that the direction that the board is going, that university services that are available to students are meeting students' needs. So it's continually about checking back in with students, making sure that what's actually happening within the university, within USASA, is actually happening. If it's not, then we can start to generate issues. We can start generating, papers, discussions, things like that to actually happen. The president sits on some pretty unique committees within the university. The president will sit on the council, which is the highest level committee within the university. So sort of every committee sort of kind of funnels up into the council. The president often sits on academic board, which is basically overlooking all of the academic processes that happen within the university. So it's quite an interesting position. You will kind of get a lot of information. You may feel overwhelmed, but the important thing is that we've tried to put in things into place, such as myself, such as Daniel, such as the people that are on the board, to really kind of support that position as you go forward. So that's sort of the president's role. Representatives are really sort of they're almost like the driving force behind the board. I think that we often kind of see the president as sort of that ultimate position, but really the president is really just voicing whatever the board has come to the decision about. So the ultimate sort of power really kind of relies within the whole entire board itself. So every representative has an important piece to provide to the board. As a representative, the real big key is to ensure that you're going out and talking to students, finding out what's actually happening on campuses. Depending on what position you actually may end up getting, I mean, because we have campus representatives, we have international representatives, postgrad representatives, the idea is that you're really sort of speaking for that particular group. So it's important that you really connect with that group and go out and meet with those people and talk to different people. So you can use the USASA clubs as another excellent resource to try to get connections to people. I think that's often the biggest sort of problem that the university faces itself, is trying to get student input and student feedback. So with you guys being actually on a peer-to-peer level, you have an advantage that the university doesn't have. So it's really important to sort of cultivate that sort of process. So that's a really, really important key. You will sit on various committees as well. The board structures subcommittees within the board itself, and that's really where a lot of the work itself happens, is within a subcommittee. So it's about attending those, generating ideas in those, doing research within those to bring sort of issues to the board, and the board makes a determination of whether that's the direction they want to go or if they want changes to that particular thing. So that's an important thing. There's formal inquiries as well. So formal inquiries are where a student may be brought up on allegations of plagiarism, academic misconduct. You will actually sit on those as a panel member, to making a determination on that particular student. So it's very important to have that sort of student perspective in that sort of decision-making process, to really be able to make a decision that's going to actually really impact on a student. Sometimes the university comes from it as from a academic, from a university perspective, where they don't really kind of have, or have lost that idea of what it was like to be a student, what actually issues are impacting on students. So it's really critical to have that. You're not really there to advocate for the student. One rep put it really, really well, is that the role of that person there is really to be representing all students, not that student, but all students, to make sure that the decision is fair for that student and every student that's at the university. So I think that's really a powerful way to look at it. So that's the other thing. The other thing you'll sit on is academic review meetings, which are quite similar. Those are more about students who have continually had poor academic performance and are actually coming up to be precluded or to be kicked out of the university based on their academic performance. You'll just sit on interviews for that process and stuff, and actually see things that are actually impacting on students. And again, it's about having that student perspective and that decision-making process. So and there's various other committees, focus groups that you can actually sit on with the university, which is a really good opportunity to provide that feedback into the university, and that ability to really sort of affect change within the university. So that's another excellent opportunity to sit in that. That's really kind of what the role around a student rep entails. So just to talk a bit about sort of what some of the requirements are as a rep, as a president, there's a requirement that you actually attend board meetings. If you actually miss 2 within the Constitution, you have to be removed from your position. So that's pretty critical. Generally, they're about once a month, so you're looking at about 12 throughout the year. They run from anywhere from about 2 to 4 hours, and that's really that. So it's really, I guess, the critical thing around that is that attendance at board meetings is important to really contribute to that sort of decision-making process that the board has itself. What you can say, and again, I've talked a little bit about that already, but to me, I guess that it's real-life experiences. It's a chance to really interact with people, work on your people skills, work on your communication skills. You'll work on research skills. You'll actually work at developing a project, developing an issue, putting it together in a way to actually influence people or actually get them to agree with your position. So that's sort of some of the things that you'll actually end up working on throughout the year. And what's that? So to give you an idea, sort of some of the commitments, we kind of talk about that it's about 10 hours a fortnight. You'll have anything from attending formal inquiries, reading board papers for the next upcoming meeting, attending subcommittee meetings. I think the most important thing to really start to understand is that it is work, that it does take time, and to be realistic. I think right now, if you're considering about nominating, you really need to be realistic about what you're currently doing, and then to think about adding another commitment like this onto it. So it's really important that you have that sort of think to find out if this is really something you can take on itself, because there is a commitment to it, and we do see that the people that do commit to it, they actually get a lot out of it. So it's kind of like anything, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. So that is one thing to consider now if you're thinking about running now. To talk a little bit about sort of how this works. Sometimes we see people come into the role and get a bit frustrated with the processes. So I think the most important thing is that change takes time. I think that's the most, we have it at 8, but it probably should be at 1. I mean, just to give you sort of an idea of how that actually impacts is you could be working with a subcommittee. You could have an excellent idea. You've done some research. You put together a report to go to the board with. You take it to the board. You work with, there's usually about maybe 2-3 board members that are on the subcommittee. So you take it to a board. You have another 11 people with their input into that idea, and then it changes a bit. So then the board says, well, we like that idea, but we want to see this, or we want to see that, or we want more info on that. So then it goes back to the subcommittee. They end up doing that more research, redeveloping the idea, write it back up again, and take it back to the board. So just that alone could take 3 months. And when you're looking at you have a 12-month term, that is a big chunk of time. So it is something to think about, that if you have something particular that you want to get done, it may not get done in your term. I think Daniel's talking about Isaac's work on the Constitution's changes. I mean, that we're looking at maybe 2 years to actually get done. So those sorts of things do take some time to do. If it is something you're passionate about, then it's about getting on it as soon as you come in and starting that work right away. So not in doing it the best you can, but it's difficult, again, trying to piece that in with everything else that you're doing. So that is something to think about. And again, it's about not your decision and not the subcommittee's decision. It's about the board itself and how it makes a decision. So it's about convincing, 13 other people that that this idea is good and that we should run with it. Well, it's not really 13. You only need a majority, so it's a little less than that. But that's the idea. Is it's still about developing ideas that really kind of convince people that you've done some research, you've done that background, and that's where I can kind of come into that. I mean, I ask a lot of questions when people bring things to me. Have we looked at this? Have we looked at that? Is this already happening? So it's about having those sorts of answers already done down in your paper, so then you can kind of drive that. So that's sort of the idea around that. But that's really it for me. So we'll move on to Carey and Vanessa.
Big round of applause for Jason.
You got to
Vanessa.
Okay, so I was the City West rep for USASA in 2015. I couldn't remember the year, so at least it's written up there. And basically, I'll just give you a quick overview of what I expected and what actually came out from being a rep. Basically, I went into the role not quite sure what I did want to get out of it. I knew I wanted to be a voice for students, but a lot of people I knew in my year didn't actually know what USASA was, and I wasn't prepared for, I guess, how much, I was quite unaware about how many people weren't actually sure about what USASA was. So that was one of the main things, I think, when I first started off, was I wanted to really let everyone know who we were and what we were doing. So I think I went into it with the expectation that I was going to have an opportunity to talk to every student, and you really don't. You don't understand how many students the uni has, so it's good to take this opportunity to go on every board you can, to take every opportunity. USASA gives you so many opportunities to sit on different boards, different events, to talk to different people, and my advice would be to take this opportunity to meet as many people as you can in the university and voice your opinions for the students, meet as many students as you can, then that way you're going to get the most out of being a rep. On top of that is being, standing for what you believe in and what the students believe in. It's really good to be strong, especially on academic integrity meetings, board meetings. You need to be strong for all the students and not be intimidated that you're sitting on a board with someone from the university. You need to, you're representing everyone, and you really need to take that seriously in the way you're doing it. So yeah, the big thing is to not shy away from any opportunity, to be strong and voiceful in the way you're doing it, and definitely listen to a lot of the students.
Thanks, Vanessa. So, as the t-shirt explains, I'm the student president this year. A lot of it's been covered by Jason actually, but the thing I would actually personally add to it is that for the 12 months, you are the president, student president. So if any of you are interested in it, this is something that will consume your time and will be basically your life for 12 months. But I don't want to scare you away from it, because it's the most rewarding experience you can imagine. You sit on the University Council, which includes the Vice Chancellor, the Chancellor, and various other university figures. You are also, Jason mentioned the Academic Board, which is also a place where heads of schools are all at, so you have everyone's ear. You are also on Student Appeals Board, so that's the last line of appeals for people that have disputes about their grades or preclusions or what have you. But what's important is that you are basically representing the voice of nearly 30,000 students. On top of that, you are also taking into consideration the management of your board, the well-being of the organisation itself, and you've also got the actual reputation of the university itself at stake. That's not to say it's on your shoulders alone, because the burden is shared amongst others. You've got a board. Your board is absolutely important. Make sure that you stand with your board, listen to your board. As it's already been pointed out, you're not representing your own views, you're representing the views of your board. Your general manager is your best friend. Basically, Daniel and I regularly consult. We are always discussing any idea that comes forward by a board member, any bit of information that comes through that might affect us. First person I go to is I discuss it with Daniel. That's not to say Daniel's there to form an opinion or shape how the board should vote. He just gives an operational perspective of how it can be managed. But yeah, your GM is your life. But I do highly recommend running for this role, because it is such an important role. It is not just a token like popularity contest where you get, you know, the yay and then that's it, nothing else. You are the voice of the students. The university cares what you have to say. You meet with important people, and you are going to make a difference if you choose to run for this role and get elected. Okay.
Can I just say one last thing on that? It's really true. Don't feel like you're going into this alone, because you've got all the other reps as your help as well, and you've got everyone in the office at USASA. And that's one thing, is you should always go in there and always ask questions and follow up. Everyone is so nice. I mean, I finished 2015 and I'm still in there all the time and helping out, because you're going to make friends with everyone, and it's pretty much, USASA is like a family. You've got everyone there, and it's so diverse with everyone's jobs and what everyone focuses on, that you've always got someone to help you to ask questions if you're ever curious about anything. Especially with the president, you should always be like, if you're ever second guessing anything or feeling like you're not doing enough, you can always go double check with them. Just, you know, you've always got the backup wherever you are.
And as president, or even as a board member, there's no role too small. Not only are you there volunteering, helping with the stands, like at O Week and what have you, you're also, I still get emails from students who have, individual students who are having their own individual problems, and it's also my job as a representative to either help them or direct them to somebody who can help them. So there is nothing's too small for you. You're there for students. That's pretty much all we've got to say.
We didn't really plan out a speech, so we're just going off our backs.
Yeah, speaking from the heart.
Yes.
So I guess this is where we open the floor to questions, and I imagine we could bring you guys back up, or you could talk for now. So anyone have any questions? So
I did see something about there being a retreat.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Leave it.
Yes. So we basically take the board out for about a 3-day retreat, about 2 nights, 3 days. Right now we're looking at doing it in January, probably the end of January time, and that is really kind of a or how would you describe it? It's almost like, I mean, it's really where we sort of immerse you in a training bit. So we really try to cover everything that the organization does. We kind of bring in, we bring in staff to talk about their roles. We've run like mock board meetings to kind of give you an idea of how those run. So that's really kind of where, and I think that the most important part of that is some of the bonding within the board itself, because they're new people that you've just met. You're going to be working with them for a year, so it's really sort of a chance for people to kind of get to know each other and to start forming a team and working together. So, that is really, it is a compulsory component of the role. What would happen is if you can put forward to the board to actually be excused from it, if there are issues. I mean, sometimes people, with that it being a break, sometimes people go home. There could be a number of issues that we could prevent people from attending that. But we really want the entire board to be there, because what we find is that people that don't attend that really kind of, when we start a board meeting and started coming to that, they're just a little bit behind, and they're still kind of trying to find their feet and get to know people. So it is, and it's fun. We do have a pretty good time. So you get to listen to Daniel and I crap on a little bit longer, but that's part of it, I guess. So yeah.
Thank you.